Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing the Atwood Adventure Tag, which was created by my sweet friend Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl, and she tagged me in her original tag. So thank you, Jolene. I really, really appreciate it. And this tag is fantastic. If you don't know Jolene, sorry, I'm looking down because I'm trying to pull up something on my computer, but I'm gonna talk to you. If you don't know Jolene, she read through pretty much everything that Atwood ever wrote in the year of 2021. So all of last year, Jolene read everything by Atwood. And so this tag is inspired, or probably like, the tag was created as a way to honor this year-long reading project that Jolene has been on, which is so cool. And she did this Mondays with Margaret series where she talked all about Margaret Atwood on Mondays, and it was just a really fun series to follow along on. And I just really commend Jolene for reading so much of one author in a year. So cool. Okay, let me pull this up. One moment. Okay, so let's jump right in. Okay, prompt 1. Before publishing her first collection of poetry in the early 1960s, Margaret Atwood had several other jobs, including working at summer camps. What was your first job? My first job outside of babysitting and tutoring was Starbucks. I was slinging drinks as a barista at Starbucks. And I've shared this story before, but when there were customers that would come in that were rude or, and I don't know if I would do it nowadays, but it feels funny that I did it back then. But we had this like code for a rude customer, and we would give them decaf rather than regular. And it always was our way to kind of get back at rude customers. Yeah. Okay, question number 2. While growing up, Margaret Atwood's family spent several months each year living in the bush in northern Ontario. What survival skill, what is a survival skill that you have that would help you to survive living off the grid? Well, I can scream really, really loud, so I'm hoping that scream can kind of get animals to like back up, but besides screaming, which is a very like, honed in and refined skill for me, I can start fires. I do need a whole newspaper to start a fire, but I'm sure in a survival skill setting where I'm really forced to come to terms with my humanity, perhaps death, I'm sure I'd get pretty good at fire starting. Okay, Margaret Atwood grew up reading comic books. Do you have a favorite comic book or comic book character? I do. In my teenage years, my dad came home with Calvin and Hobbes. Not this exact one. It was a collection of Calvin and Hobbes strips in a, paperback. And oh my gosh, we were in love. My siblings and I have 5 siblings, and we were absolutely in love. I'm number 2 in our order, so I'm second oldest. I remember it was myself, my brother right under me, so number 3, and number 4, I think it was us that were really, really into this, and we just read them over and over and over again and would swap them out, and it was just a ton of fun. If you don't know what Calvin and Hobbes is, it's a comic strip that ran in the 80s, I believe, in the 80s and 90s in the United States. And, oh yeah, right here, I know what I'm talking about. 1985 to 1995, these are the Sunday comics. And Bill Watterson was the creator of that, and he was very philosophical. He talked a lot about, the meaning of life and why we are here, and would often bring that into the discussions through his characters, which is a little boy and his imaginary tiger, who's also a stuffed animal. So like to the parents, he's this stuffed tiger named Hobbes, but to Calvin, Calvin sees Hobbes as alive, and they have dialogue and go on adventures. And Calvin is, plays tricks on people and all of that. So a lot of fun. And also the babysitter in Calvin and Hobbes is named Rosalind, and that's my older sister's name, and I always thought that was really fun. Okay, moving on. Prompt 4. Margaret Atwood is not only a poet and author, she also illustrated books and shown her creativity in so many other ways. What are some ways that you are creative? I think the way that I'm most consistently creative is in the kitchen. Sometimes I will just get in my mind that I want to learn how to make fried okra, and I'll go on a journey of these different ways to make fried okra. Or I'll say, you know, I want to make fried rice with what we have in the fridge, and so I'll kind of pull everything out and make a delicious meal out of leftovers. I've done little experiments like I don't want to buy anything for our pantry until we've used up what we have. That kind of thing. Just little projects that keep me interested and invested in my, you know, in the kitchen, and which I love. And it's been a lot of fun. I have made several carrot cakes. They're not beautiful cakes, but they're really tasty. And I'm always kind of trying to, you know, better the process or figure out a different way of doing it in order to make it both beautiful and delicious. Usually the beauty ends up failing, but it is very delicious. Okay, moving on. Prompt 5. Some of Margaret Atwood's writing is inspired by myths, folktales, and fairy tales. What is your favorite myth, folktale, or fairy tale, and why? So when I was a teacher, I taught the myth of Icarus, Icarus and Daedalus, which is about the story about a father and son, and the father warns his son not to fly too close to the actual sun. And the son does not follow his father's advice. And as I taught it, we read a couple of different versions, and I just think of this fondly because it really got my students engaged and critically thinking about literature. And it was one of the first times that year that the students were very, very into their work. And as a teacher, you know, to see that happen in the mind of a student is really pretty awesome, to be honest with you, to have them engaged and thinking and wondering and mulling over an idea. I just really love that. And so I love the myth of Icarus because it reminds me of that moment when I was teaching. It's also just a great myth. Okay, prompt 6. Margaret Atwood is well known. Margaret Atwood's most well-known novel is The Handmaid's Tale. Jolene, your questions are amazing. It is my reading mouth that is not cooperating. So Margaret Atwood's most well-known novel is The Handmaid's Tale. What is a task or chore you wish you had a maid or servant to do? This is easy. Laundry, 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 laundry. It is a thing that I feel like I always have on my list to do. And everything else I don't really mind. General tidying gets out of hand sometimes, but really the thing that I feel like is haunting me forever is laundry. All right, prompt 7. The themes Margaret Atwood writes about have stayed consistent in all her writing over 6 decades. Margaret Atwood has had a really long writing career. She writes about the role of men and women in society, relationships, religion, marriage, and identity, to name a few. If Atwood were to write a novel about you, what are some themes she would need to include? So I asked my husband this. I said, if there was a book written about me, what would be included? And he said the following: rebellion, place, and self-reflection. And I was like, what? So I think rebellion is because I tend to feel very firm in my ideas until I don't, and I'll kind of rebel against an idea when I switch. I also have had, you know, intense moments of rebellion as a teenager, which have played a role in my life. Place, probably because when I was first married, within that first year of marriage, my husband and I, we left our hometown of Stockton, California, and moved 3,000 miles across the United States to South Carolina. And I constantly think about, you know, not what if we never moved, but I think about my hometown, and I think about it with fondness, and I have a lot of nostalgia and a lot of wonderful memories about my hometown, and it's always something that I kind of grapple with missing the place that I feel like I most belong. Though I know that I love it here and I have a place of belonging here, but there's just something about the place that you grew up that I can't shake. clearly she would have to include that because I can't even sum it up. And then self-reflection. I tend to be a very reflective person. Did I do, was that action the best reaction? Am I doing well enough in these areas? And then I added one. So one outside of the themes that my husband Ted named, I would say that religion would have to be one. Religion is something that played a huge role in my life when I was younger, and less so now, but it's something that I do think about. Especially since I've been reading a lot more the last couple of years. Religion has come up as a talking point, as a thought point, as something that I grapple with and mull over. Okay, we're moving on from the heavy themes of my life, and we're going to go to prompt 8. Margaret Atwood has created words for her novels. She has talked about how this makes it difficult for translators of her work. Do you have a favorite word, and what is your favorite? Okay, I don't exactly have a favorite word, but we have made up our own words. You know how couples have celebrity names? I think they're called ship names. Well, when I was pregnant with my first baby, Graham, my son, we didn't want to tell everybody his name because we didn't want all this input about whether his name was good or bad or loved or not loved. I just didn't want anyone to tell me. This is like the rebellion in me. Like, don't tell me if you like my son's name or not, because it doesn't matter, because I like my son's name and that's his name. But we wouldn't tell anybody, and so people were like, well, we need to call the baby something, so they were saying baby Telly, because it's Ted and Shelley is Telly, or baby Shed, which was not my favorite, but Shelley and Ted is Shed. We've also named our places. So one house we called La Casa Swearingen, the house of Swearingen, we and it was referred to as that. Another name that we've claimed, but we've definitely not made up ourselves, was in the show Deadwood, the main protagonist in there. He's sort of an anti-hero, is named Al Swearingen. And in the show, some of the characters have very strong accents and they can't say Swearingen, so they say Sverington or Sverington, and so we have taken on that name as well, and I think one of our households was called Sverington, Sveerton or something like that. And so, yeah, it was just, so we've taken it upon ourselves as naming our homes and our places and giving our kids nicknames as we see fit. So yeah, been a lot of fun. Prompt 9. Margaret Atwood was born in Canada and now lives in Canada, but she also lived in other countries like the United States, England, France, Germany, and Scotland. What countries have you lived in, or what is another country you would like to live in? I did spend 8 weeks, a full summer in the Yucatan of Mexico, in Merida, to be very specific, this very specific town, city of Mexico, which was really wonderful. And if I were to live somewhere, we've talked about living in Portugal because my husband has some ancestors from Portugal, and there is a way to obtain citizenship and so on and so forth while having ancestors in Portugal. And so we've actually considered living in Portugal. It's cycled through our consciousness over the decade or so that we've been together. And so that's been a lot of fun. I've also visited Portugal for a couple of weeks. I think it was 3 weeks, really, in Lisbon, which was beautiful. I mean, just stunning. The art there in Portugal is gorgeous. The Gulbenkian Museum. Anyways, I'm not going to go on and on about how wonderful Portugal is, but it is wonderful. Okay. Prompt 10. Margaret Atwood is an advocate for caring for the earth. What is something you do to take care of our planet? This one caused me a little I was like, oh no, do I do anything? And then I remembered that there have been cycles in my life, just like wanting to get healthy. There is this cycle of I don't feel like I'm doing enough in my power to take care of the earth. And with those cycles, a change always happens. And it's never a change I regret. So there have been consumer habits. I almost fully purchase things secondhand at this point. Clothing, for myself and so on. I just love secondhand shopping, but a lot of that is from wanting to do the better for the earth. Buying reusable, like switching out disposable for reusable has been a trend in my life. So there are times, but a lot of times it's spurred on by wanting to do better and being realizing that I am not doing as well as I could in a certain area, and then moving towards that or making a change towards that, and then kind of, falling off, or like knowing that that's in place now. For example, like getting rid of all of the disposable for reusable. Now that that's in place, I don't really think about it anymore, and it's just the way of life now. So again, it sort of cycles, and then the changes that I make stay, which is really nice. Question 11. Margaret Atwood is passionate about animal rights, and some of her writing has included animals and reflections on animals. What is a topic you are passionate about? Okay, so I said access to information. As a trained librarian, that is my the thing that I have my education in, as well as a couple of other things. One of the things that I feel really passionate about is access to information, which I already said. Now I'm like trying to explain it. So for example, our world is set up for someone who can read. And so teaching someone to read is giving them a huge access to information that they didn't have access to before. So, but literacy is bigger than just reading. There's also like being, computer literate. And so teaching somebody or giving them the tools to become computer literate is a huge way to give them access to information. There could also be things like giving a tutorial on how to use a website is giving someone access to information. Or making your font sans serif, so not to have all those curly cues on it when you're making a YouTube video. This is something that I do. I try and make sure that all of the font that I use, I try to, it doesn't always happen, it doesn't have any, that it's without serif, without the curls and fanciness, because some of that fanciness means that it's not readable for certain people, and I don't want that for my videos. I want my videos to be accessible. I also, in my videos, make sure that there is high contrast between the text and the background. So if you use a light colored text on a light colored background, or a dark colored text on a dark colored background, it means that may not be enough contrast for someone to read, and then the text may be unreadable for them. So I try and use high contrast. And so these little things, because I want people to be able to access my videos in a small way, but in a bigger way, it's just good practice for content creators, publishers and books to, use text that is readable for everyone rather than just those who are able to read that text. I hope that makes sense. So access to information is something that I have thought about, I continue to think about, and that I really have a lot of passion for. Okay, the final prompt before I tag people is 12. Margaret Atwood is supportive of new authors in a variety of ways. Who is a new author and or what debut novel do you wish more people knew about? Let me read that question again. Who is a new author and or what debut novel do you wish more people knew about? I actually am I don't keep up with new releases very often. I'm working on shifting that. But mostly it's older authors that I love, that I don't want to go away because of posterity or to just fade away. And one of them is Bill Watterson of Calvin and Hobbes. He owns the Watterson estate or whatnot. He owns all of the rights to his work. And that means that if there is a reprinting, he has to give permission to do that. And he doesn't do that very often. Watterson doesn't. And so I worry that if he dies and he dies with those rights, and perhaps if he left in his will that he doesn't want any more reprintings of Calvin and Hobbes, that he will go away. And there's something really sad to me about that. I appreciate he has the rights and he doesn't have his work reprinted or reproduced or created into a different form. So there's no cartoon of Calvin and Hobbes because Watterson doesn't want it. Watterson doesn't want toys made of his his characters. He doesn't want anyone riffing on his stuff or creating something new out of it. And he does that for partly because he's an incredibly shy individual from what I've read, and partly it's because he believes that he wanted his comic to stay a comic. He didn't want other influences he wanted people, when they thought of Calvin and Hobbes, to think of the comic and not the mug that they have and not the toy that they have or the cartoon that they've seen on television. And so to protect that idea, he doesn't let anyone use his intellectual property, which on the one hand I think is ethically very interesting. I think artistically he's holding a standard for his work, right, which is really admirable. But on the other hand, it means that his work may fade. His work may never be reprinted at some point. It's less likely that my children will remember Calvin and Hobbes over Peanuts because of the decisions that Watterson is making. And that's really sad to me. And so I have this mixed feeling about Calvin and Hobbes, and mostly I just don't want it to go away, and I want it to continue to be published and to be printed so that more generations of kids and adults alike can enjoy this work. So, something I feel quite supportive and passionate about, Bill Watterson's Calvin and Hobbes. Okay, so it says tag some of your favorite booktubers. Jolene tagged a bunch of people that I love and watch. So, thank you, Jolene. So I'm going to try and tag outside of that group. So I'm going to tag Very Literary Carrie. I'm going to tag Mark at Book Time with Elvis. Summer from Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats. I'm going to also tag Kim at Middle of the Book March, and Gina Stanier from Gina Stanier Books, and Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading, because this is a fun one. Y'all, I'm sorry. And Steve Donahue is back, so I'm gonna tag Steve Donahue too. Steve, if you're interested. Actually, if you're all interested, this is more of a get to know you tag. I really love these kinds because you don't really need to prep a lot for it. You can just sit down and ramble, which is what I did. And yeah, that's it for me. So that's really it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.